This video has to do with finding and narrowing a topic. So if we look at section 61 in the Prentice Hall Reference Guide, first we need to think about a purpose. Like, what our purpose for writing the essay is and who the audience is. And page 332 gives you a chart that sort of shows you what different purposes look like and how those would sort of play out if you apply them to different topics. So take a look at that chart and sort of see what it means to inform or persuade or summarize, analyze, or evaluate. On page 334, it discusses how to narrow a topic. So you can make the mistake of kind of going too broad with a topic. You can also be way too specific. If you're too specific, it's almost like you can't do anything with the topic. You're just stuck. If you're too broad, you become overwhelmed by possibilities. So there's a certain specific level of specificity you want to reach that will help you examine your topic. And if you look at page 335, it sort of breaks down how you can go broader if you need to. Like, say you've thought too specifically about your topic and you've narrowed it too much, how you can, like, broaden that, or how you can make it more specific. On page 337, it discusses how to formulate a research question. So a research question is essential to what you're going to do for this paper. You really have to have a question in mind that can guide the process of your research. It's so much easier to locate sources that will be helpful to you if you know what you're looking for. So you can immediately tell if a topic seems to be appropriate, if you should spend your time looking at that source, if you have a really good research question. So page 337 gives you examples of research questions. And at first, you're going to start out with really basic, fundamental questions, but as you do more research, you want to make that a more complex, more interesting question. So on page 337, we have some examples. Okay, for childhood obesity, what is childhood obesity? How do you know if a child is obese? How common is the problem? How much have rates increased in recent years? So just basic, fundamental questions that you need to answer in order to know enough about your topic. Also, the prescription drug abuse issue. What is prescription drug abuse? What kinds of drugs are typically abused? How common is the problem? Which groups tend to be among prescription drug addicts? Okay, so those basic fundamental questions. And then it says, once you know the basics about your topic, you can develop more specific and complicated questions that lead to your thesis. So, for example, the childhood obesity topic, why do children get less physical education than they used to? To what degree is a person's weight influenced by the behaviors of those around him or her? Okay, we can look at the one about prescription drug abuse. What can be done to prevent addicts from doctor shopping to get multiple prescriptions? And are people's prescriptions tracked in some way? Should they be? So notice how much more interesting and engaging those second set of questions are compared to the first set. Okay, page 338. So once you have some answers to some questions and you've kind of narrowed it down, you want to reach finally an ultimate final question that you want to know the answer to. So if you look on page 338, the childhood obesity topic, what can schools do to foster healthier habits among children and reduce childhood obesity? So that's what this person wants to find out. What can schools do? So it's not just what can anyone do, like families, friends, schools. It's specifically schools, which will really help narrow the places that this person can search. The prescription drug abuse topic, how can patients' access to prescription medications be effectively monitored to prevent abuse? So it's not a question of should they be monitored, but the idea is they should be monitored, but what is the best way to do that? So those are great questions, and they're going to be Very helpful when these individuals are trying to find sources for their paper. Okay, so information about formulating a thesis. Now, the answer to your research question will be your thesis. Okay, so that's why you have to have a good research question. The ultimate answer, the answer that you come up with after all the research that you do, will be the answer. The answer will be the thesis statement. Okay, so you might find that your opinion changes. Like first you thought one thing, and then now after all this time you spent researching, you think something different. And if that's true, then you need to go with that. You need to go with what the research tells you. On page 339, it talks about different research questions and how those research questions can lead to different kinds of thesis statements. So if a paper is informative, for example, at the top of the page it lists informative, you might ask a question, why is it important to know whatever? A sample research question, why should people learn how to use a defibrillator, for example? And then the thesis statement, knowing how to use a defibrillator can help you save a life. So that's like pretty basic. But here's a position paper. Should a person or organization take a certain action? For example, should universities permit students to carry handguns on campus? And then somebody does research and says universities should not permit students to carry handguns on campus. Okay, so then the rest of the essay would go on to prove why that's the case, why this person feels the way that he or she does. So it would behoove you to look through this chart and sort of see how people formulate a good research question, and then the kind of thesis statement that can result from that research question. So if we look at page 340, we can see, like, after the person comes up with a good research question, then after weeks of research, they're going to be able to come up with a good thesis statement. So looking at the childhood obesity topic, because of their intricate social networks, schools are the prime place to begin a campaign of radical change toward reducing obesity rates. Starting a healthy epidemic in schools could spread through social networks and inspire a fit and healthier generation. So I'm assuming then that this paper will go on to talk about how schools are really the best place to help students prevent obesity and the ways in which schools could do that. Looking at the prescription drug abuse topic, with greater education and cooperation, the chain of drug distributors, including prescribers and pharmacists, along with coordinated federal oversight, can make the biggest impact in alleviating prescription drug abuse. So it's possible that somebody might disagree with this person and say, no, you don't want to it shouldn't be the government, it shouldn't have federal oversight. Somebody could disagree with that, with this person's position that it needs to be in combination of drug distributors and the doctors who prescribe and the pharmacists, along with federal involvement. Okay, so one thing you want to keep in mind about your thesis is that it needs to be arguable. It needs to be a statement that somebody could disagree with you over. But your job is to show why you have plenty of support for your thesis. There are primary sources and there are secondary sources. I have a feeling that most of you will be using secondary sources. But primary sources are when you're going to the person that it originally came from. So if you did a survey or a study or an interview, that would be a primary source. If you got an account that someone told of an event, that would be a primary source. Primary sources can also be like maps and information like that. Biographies, emails, original emails that people sent out. Secondary sources are what we're typically used to, like news articles, reviews, documentaries, scholarly articles, so information like that. And then it's a good idea to look at the checklist on page 342 that talks about how you can plan your research by asking questions.